So there's code on screen, pause if you need to. There's another piece of a line of code, but there's also another text document I want to show. So this, please use the timestamps if you want to skip forward to gameplay. Otherwise, for those interested in custom content with PERM specifically, you'll notice this code looks very similar. I swear it's not just a copy paste, because there is an important part to this code that I've added trying to limit no shackle things. And again, actually I'm torn. I think I might leave no shackle the way it is, but update it with obviously fixes and then allow you to make it easier. But I'm still undecided, which is why I have not released anything yet. But the important part to talk about is that this line of code right here, I'll show you in a separate syntax text file, which I don't remember if it was with previous PERM versions. I'll explain later. But essentially, we're doing the same thing here. We want to count how many technical difficulty stacks we have. And then the second part of this code is, so there are two parts of this code. The first part is just going through and checking whether you use the school nurse here, and then checking how many stacks you have. However, right after that is the treatment of no shackle technical difficulties. This here, I'm not going to show you the code that I was working on yet, because I'm testing it even here on recording. I did a little test and things seemed to work, but essentially this is where you would put, so instead of this, you would just put like, add a technical difficulty stack. This is pseudocode, by the way. And then you would do other checks. Other checks that I added were, say, if you're at limit, if you're under the limit, and then if you're under the mystery limit. I should have really prepared this earlier, but this is essentially the pseudocode that I've used for the moment. So just making sure you're not at the max limit per run. During a run, and then if you're under the mystery limit. The reason why I made two separate limits, or was thinking about two separate limits at least, is because I didn't want you to have more than a certain number, because otherwise RNG can get really out of control in a very, very minuscule amount of runs. I'll mention this during the run as well. And then there's the mystery limit, in which you can get slapped by, you know, if you have bad luck right now playing as no shackle currently, you can get like 5 to 6 stacks immediately. And then the same in the lighthouse, but that's a separate consideration altogether. And then after passing these checks, you add a technical difficulty stack. Of course, you have to add other limiters elsewhere, which is why things like mystery end, like after a mystery ends, you set the technical difficulty mystery limit back to 0. The reason I don't have to set a max limit back to 0 is because we can do the same thing here in this line of code, except that instead of adding the number of technical difficulty stacks to treat, which is what would happen in the school nurse, you instead are always checking the max limit whenever you activate this these two blocks of code. Anyway, moving on to the syntax text file. This is in the syntax text file if you use PERM. Basically, if this wasn't there before, the point is that it's here now in PERM version 1.44. So yeah, a lot of helpful things. In particular, we want to note this, because this is what was being used at the moment to check the nurse or check limits if I so implemented and upload the changes here. At the same time, there are also other fun things to do, like actually making a function of your own. So there are ideas I have with that, but until I actually implement them, if I ever do, because life is weird at the moment for me, then yeah, I will. But otherwise, let's actually get into gameplay, and I will explain what I mean by the changes I made, because I have made the changes. So, without further ado, I don't think I was going to do any much more with Nightly Aura. I think it was mainly a quality of life thing, but we're also going to be playing as a custom character here, because I need to test her before I upload her, because there were still problems that I was having. So, for timestamp's sake, as we get into a no shackle run, because World of Horror, and I didn't change the backstory for some reason, we immediately start with technical difficulties, and then this needs to be considered as well, because if you don't handle variables well, and it's really kind of a sloppy, well, not kind of, it is a sloppy way to handle it, but basically there is a variable counter happening as I get stacks of technical difficulty per investigation. However, it does not include this initial technical difficulties. If it sounds like I'm saying a lot of hoopla, just bear with it for the moment, because I promise you it makes sense. But otherwise, I think this is a knowledge check pretty much, where you just pop it immediately. You don't get all of your stamina back, but you get you have a free bath pretty much at the start of every run. You might as well use it. Same reason, same knowledge check in Nightly Aura, where you can just immediately get max stamina, max reason. So sailors, footage, festival, loom, and rental. What do I do first? Do I do footage first? Yeah. Loom does not have a boss. I'm thinking of a different mystery. I always mix up, because they're from the same mystery pack, and, well, that's not an excuse, but I always mix up Loom with another one that actually has, I think it's a forced boss. Anywho. off we go. We're going to get funds because we need a weapon of sorts. And once I get into investigations, I'll show you what I mean. Butterfly knife, butterfly knife. Get the butterfly nerf. Get a weapon first, and then grab the ally. But anywho. So as I go through these, I did add a specific debug line. I should have actually showed you the code, but again, I didn't want to show you the code at the beginning because it is not finalized yet, and I don't want to give you faulty code in case I run into a very specific weird bug, which shouldn't happen, but again, I tested this code out beforehand, but I made a slight change, so I don't want to give you bad code. Now, sometimes I will forget about this very same rule, but at least I remember it now, so that you don't accidentally, again, copy-paste code that doesn't work. But I explained at the very beginning of the video, essentially the essence of what I'm doing. So basically adding a limit to the number of technical difficulty stacks you can get during an entire run, or during a mystery. And then I also added a debug line showing you that you hit the max. Now, this doesn't need to exist. It probably won't come out in the main... well, the debug part of the message probably won't be part of the actual release if I do release something like this. But if nothing else, it's a good, I guess, showcase of what you can do. And for anyone trying to test out code or custom content code, eto file stuff, again, you can just use this as an example of what you can and cannot, or maybe should not do, or should do. So, shrug. That being said, I'm often not the most efficient with my code, but if I'm doing like test runs like right here, that's kind of to be expected. But when something releases, also just expect there to be hot fixes. Yeah, no matter what. We're going to take -4 all damage in the face because I'm feeling particularly lazy. But also, this character goes into despair if I run, so I don't want to do that either. So, as we fail, because stats don't matter, if we don't get another stack of technical difficulties, this might just end up being a very, very fast run. But otherwise, we'll survive for the moment. The gruesome totem will equip later if need be. And I'm looking at the wooden bat and wondering if I didn't make a mistake somewhere. But hey... Now, we can also now use the nice ring and get a pack of cigarettes, but shrug. So, the part of technical difficulties why I didn't believe I should change the max. Again, I'm not saying an opinion that I have or the opposite, the devil's advocate, are right and wrong, but I do like to think of, not positive and negatives, but... I guess both sides of the river, for lack of a better word. So what I mean by that, as we take Loom here, is that No Shackle as it is right now, if you go download No Shackle right now, there is no max limit. And the kind of upside to that is that the boss will feel... it doesn't feel as limited, basically, because this is the original intent of No Shackle, and if you get bad luck, some players can look at luck RNG in a game and be like, that's part of the design, and it's not so bad. But there are players, me included at times, where if RNG is bad enough, like if I do all of these back to back to back and get -1 reason at 15%, then it's very, very painful. Now, on the other hand of that, the chance of rolling a single reason loss is actually still not as high as it might seem, even with 4 to 5 stacks of technical difficulties, although I think that's close to 50%. But the point I'm trying to make afterward is that things like proccing 2 reason loss in a single thing is essentially 15% into 15%. Old gods forbid you actually roll you actually lose 3 reason while getting maybe a stack of technical difficulties. Basically, 15% is a very small number. It's not impossibly small, and as I've mentioned before, there can be a subset of players who just end up getting bad luck, whether it's 2 reason loss, whether it's getting 5 stacks of technical difficulties back to back to back, therefore increasing the amount of reason you lose. If you really want to, not constrict, if you really want to simplify the issue, essentially you are losing a range of reason per run overall. And the range in which you lose reason, how much reason you lose, has a certain amount of RNG attached to it. That doesn't make sense saying it outright. If you don't understand that immediately, don't worry, because there's a lot of math involved in binomial distribution theory, essentially. But I think binomial distribution, I feel like it's not theory. I feel like there's another word. I often run into this term, basically, and it's something I often think about when adding RNG things. So, as we get into rental here and have 4 stamina, we can still survive this, but boy, oh boy, is it going to be interesting. So we're going to grab Remy Extract and then move on. But, yeah, just off the top of my... I gave you an example of binomial distribution. So having 3 stacks of technical difficulties is about... the chance of losing -1 reason is 85% cubed, basically. So what would that be? That would be, I think, like around 60-something%. So there's a 60-something% chance that you don't lose a single point in reason. However, when I mention range, I mention that, when I say that, I'm meaning that, so if you have 3 stacks of technical difficulties, there is a 60-something% chance of not losing 1 reason, but there is, say, a... what would it be? I think it's 15% into the 2 remaining stacks. So, what do I want? What would that be? I think around like it's more than 15%. But let's just say, for argument's sake, this is not the exact number. 20% chance to lose 2 reason, because with 3 stacks you have a higher chance of getting 15%. That's conceptually what's happening. And then afterward, if you have 3 stacks, of course there's a chance of you to lose 3 reason, but it's very, very small, because then you have to hit 15% 3 times in a row. That's the odds of you losing 3 reason with 3 stacks of technical difficulties. And then there's the chance of getting 2 reason down with 3 stacks of technical difficulties is in between the chance of losing 1 reason and 15% cubed, essentially. So that's what I mean by there's a range of RNG, and most of the time you're not going to be losing more than -1 reason, is what I'm trying to say. Now, there is a chance, but you get the point. I think you get the point by now. I've tried to explain the best as I can. If you want to hear more about it, I can go on for pretty much hours talking about RNG, specifically binomial distribution, and how it affects just gameplay in general, or the game development in general, or design, really. But as I continue onward, so note here, this is a very lucky run, because in about 21 investigations, I only got, I think, 1 stack of technical difficulties. Did I get rid of any stacks? So again, this is a luckier run in which I'm not losing as much reason. And again, it's not like I'm guaranteed to lose reason either, because again, it's 15%. So that's all I can say for the moment, as I need to focus on healing for a moment, and then I'll continue talking. But I forgot to level up here. But even after losing reason, again, you can get rid of technical... Basically, I did design No Shackle in a way where you normally have a lot of ways to avoid so much loss. So even if you are sitting on 4+ stacks of technical difficulties, it's not the end of the world. It does get very annoying if you're very, very unlucky. I'm not going to deny that. But the odds of that happening are pretty much the same as you being unlucky in a full run of World of Horror without being on Ill-Fated. So a common parallel that I like to use to make fun of is that, for fun, is that I mention, hey, I'm not on an Ill-Fated run, but I'm failing every check. That, I think, is actually worse than bad luck in No Shackle. No Shackle might be worse. I might be exaggerating a bit, but you get the point. Failing every single event in World of Horror, would I choose that over carrying 5+ stacks of technical difficulties starting from Mystery 1? I think the answer to that is normally going to be no, because, again, there is a chance you just lose a whole stack of reason, as I'm losing right now, even with just 2 stacks. But the odds of that happening in a vacuum of runs is a minuscule amount compared to the number of runs in which I just get bad luck back to back to back to back in about 10 runs. Another way to mention this is that if I do 10 runs, how many, and I swear I'm not mentioning this number for any specific, I literally just thought of the number 10. But if you do, let's just say 100 runs of No Shackle. Let's say out of those 100 runs, you have like 7 runs where you have 7+ stacks of technical difficulties and lose, I don't know, 18 reason overall due to No Shackle. I still think that's better than and these are all Harbinger runs, mind you. So 100 Harbinger runs without No Shackle, where you fail like 80 to 90% of your event checks, which is very, very bad, by the way. I do think that might still be worse, but again, running the numbers on that is very, very hard, because then you would have to simulate the RNG factor of which events you get and which events you fail, basically, if you're looking at a percentage. But again, that's why I consider No Shackle in its current state still balanced. It can be difficult. Again, I'm never going to deny that, but it's not as bad as one may think. So that's that. If you want my opinion on it, that's my opinion on it. Nice roll, by the way. What's the accuracy? 70%. Okay, yeah. Understandable then. But note that I have the gruesome totem still. So boop. But yeah, No Shackle, I can add a limit to it. That's why I was reconsidering, and I still need to update No Shackle regardless because there are visual bugs in one of the events, so it does need to be hotfixed. But if I do add basically a different version of No Shackle, the different version will probably be the easier version in which you can replace. Although, again, on that, it kind of feels weird to me because normally you would present a player with the easier version, if that makes any sense. By design, at least I'm of the opinion that you normally should do that by default and then allow the player to make things harder. But if you want something to be harder, normally that comes... I have to brace into 2 attacks. Normally you make the player go out of their way to make things harder rather than to make things easier, if that makes any sense. And if it doesn't make sense, well, I'm not saying that there aren't reasons to do the opposite, but I think in most cases you want the player to... by default, experience an easier time. Now, again, at the same time, there's another nuance here where you don't want something to be too easy immediately. So, shrug, right? We're also going to gamble here, by the way. So, off we go. We only need to hit one of these attacks. Yeah, we only need to hit one. But, boy, oh boy, are we in pain. So we got another stack of technical difficulties. I, unfortunately, never hit the limit, by the way. It seems like we're not going to, unless we reach the lighthouse. But... something to mention, if I didn't already mention it, I might as well, just to be kind of sure here, is that, just making sure I got the right stat, is that at the beginning of every mystery, I also reset the mystery limit back to 0. So that's how I'm managing or tracking the number of technical difficulty stacks you can get per mystery. Because you still, I still wanted the player to be limited in getting a certain amount of stacks, because otherwise you recover. So the reason behind that is, if I do limit it the way I'm planning to, is that you get rid of a stack of technical difficulties, but then you get another one in the next investigation. Whereas if you limit it, just making sure I didn't get the torch. If you limit it, then if you get your 3rd stack of technical difficulties, and then you get rid of it, you're not going to get a 4th or 5th stack afterward, and it doesn't feel as bad. I do agree that it doesn't feel as bad, basically. But at the same time, again, No Shackle in its current state, if I want to be... What's the word I'm trying to use? I guess cowardly is the best phrase I can use. That's not the word I want to use, but if you want to be a bit more cowardly with things, essentially... I saw technical difficulties and I bamboozled myself. But, yeah, what I was going to say, if you want to be more cowardly about it, then... Or if I wanted to be more cowardly about it, I would say something along the lines, or I could point out that World of Horde already has RNG aspects of it, inside of it, to the point where, I mean, I mentioned it earlier, if you fail just 7 events back to back to back because of RNG, like, you were going to lose the run regardless. Now, that's not to say you don't try your hardest, but that's a separate conversation, because we're trying to run the parallel of a really bad No Shackle run versus a very bad World of Horror run. Now, obviously, a nuance there is that you can get a very bad No Shackle run and roll really badly on events, but again, the point I'm trying to make is that something like that was going to probably end up losing you the run anyway, where you still have agency over your own strategy. So that's not going to console some players, but I do not, well, it consoles me, but also I do think there's a certain pride you can have by saying, haha, RNG had to bring me down. Now, that's a personal thing. That's a very subjective opinion, but I think you get where I'm getting at here. And so here's the debug line, by the way. So if I do add a limit here, I'll probably change the message to basically tell you that you've reached the max stacks. That way you're not wondering why you didn't get another stack of technical difficulties. Or I could just say nothing. And then this is the debug line so that I know that this is what's triggering it. There's a separate one that triggers if I get 3 in the same mystery, which I think technically this counts as, but you would get the point. Before you start a mystery, or when you start, or after a mystery ends, this variable resets. So, yeah, also I need to get this right. I think it was Flume, and off we go. So, as we move on from this run, yeah, again, I'm supposed to upload some of this content, but obviously No Shackle Nightly Aura, I was still bug test or play testing here. Otherwise, this character really should be complete. I tested the thing I wanted to, so everything should be fine. But of course, I still need to come up with the Japanese-English meta translation when I throw her up onto Nexus Mods, because she's already out on Steam, but obviously that's not the PERM version. But yeah, without further ado, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, whatever else, you know what to do. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!